You build it brick by brick. With respect, I turned to face him. It means next time someone tries to shut me out of your life, you don't just notice, you fight. He nodded slowly. I will. I promise. And the house? He sighed. I guess we'll lose it. I shrugged. Not my problem anymore. His shoulders slumped. You're right, he said, about all of it. Then he turned to go. But before he reached the door, he stopped. Dad, he said softly at Christmas, when you walked in and said your piece, I was angry. But I was proud of you too. I nodded. Good. Maybe there's hope for you yet. After he left, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey. Stepped out onto the back porch. Spring was coming. I could smell it in the air. Promise, growth, peace. I sipped slowly, the warmth of the drink spreading through me. My phone buzzed. A message from Rosa. Sunday dinner. The kids want to show you their school projects. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Real family, I'd learned, wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about being wanted, being valued. Everything else, just expensive theater. And I was done buying tickets. The first time I sat at Rosa's kitchen table, it was supposed to be a one-time thing. She had invited me after church with a smile that didn't ask permission, just expected agreement. Rosa had a way of making people feel like they belonged, even if they didn't believe it themselves yet. That Sunday, her dining room was full. Not just of food, but of life. Her grandkids rushed in from the backyard, barefoot, their socks muddy, their cheeks pink from the breeze. Her daughter Maribel was stirring a pot of something that smelled like garlic and home. Her husband Alfredo had the football game on low in the background, pretending not to watch while sneaking glances. And in the middle of it all, Rosa handed me a plate. Sit, she said, before everything gets cold or worse eaten. That plate had rice, black beans, roast pork, and plantains that were crisp on the outside, sweet in the middle. The kind of food that reminded me of my mother's cooking from a time long before grief and bitterness. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a guest. I felt like I was supposed to be there. By April, it had become tradition. Sunday dinners at Rosa's, sometimes just her and Alfredo. Sometimes the whole chaotic extended family. Always noisy, always delicious, always warm in that way no thermostat could recreate. One evening, her grandson Mateo pulled me aside, eyes wide and serious. Mr. Dennis, he whispered, are you my grandpa too? I laughed gently, ruffling his hair. I'm just your friend right now, buddy. But I like being here with you. He nodded solemnly, then ran off to show me a Lego tower he'd built. Something loosened in my chest that night. Something I hadn't realized was still wound tight. It was the feeling of belonging. And it had nothing to do with blood or gifts or keeping people happy so they wouldn't leave. It was just being accepted, exactly as I was. Michael started coming around once a week. Never unannounced, never entitled. Just quiet visits, coffee, a short walk, helping me change the air filters in the attic. He never asked for money again. Instead, he started offering help. I know a guy who can fix that fence post for cheaper, he'd say. Or, want me to drive you to that checkup next week. The first few times I was suspicious. But over time, I realized something. He wasn't trying to earn something. He was trying to rebuild something. And it wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. There were awkward silences, things left unsaid. But there were also small, steady signs of growth. Once I caught him staring at the photo of Maria on my mantel. He didn't say anything, just looked at it for a long time, then whispered, I miss her. So did I. Every day. In late May, Isabella sent a letter, handwritten, apologizing for everything, for the lies, the humiliation, the manipulation. She admitted she had been ungrateful, short-sighted, and afraid of losing status in a world that judged people by dinner parties and countertops. She didn't ask me to reply. She didn't ask for money. Just forgiveness. I set the letter aside. Maybe one day I'd respond. But not yet. Forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't a gift you gave just because someone asked. It was something that grew like a scar, healing over time. And some wounds you had to let breathe before you covered them. That summer, I started volunteering at the senior center twice a week, fixing leaky faucets, organizing potlucks, leading a Fix-It 101 class for folks who wanted to learn how to change light bulbs or patch drywall without calling their grandkids. It gave me a reason to get up early again, a reason to wear my work boots and carry my toolbox with pride. I met a man named Earl who'd been a mechanic for 40 years and could still rebuild a carburetor by feel. And Margaret, who made the best peach cobbler I'd ever tasted and insisted I take home leftovers for emergencies. They were strangers once. Now they were Sunday dinner regulars too. One Saturday evening, Rosa found me sitting on her porch swing, staring at the stars. "You look like a man who's thinking too much," she said. "Just counting," I replied. "Counting what? How many years I spent chasing the wrong kind of love." She sat beside me, her shoulder touching mine. "It's never too late to chase the right kind," she said softly. And I believed her. Not because I wanted to, but because she'd shown me. The house was quiet that night as I got ready for bed. No TV, no phone buzzing, just the hum of a home that had finally truly become mine. As I turned off the lights, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Older. Yes, tired sometimes. But not bitter. Not anymore. Because the man in the mirror had stopped asking, "Why didn't they love me better?" and started asking, "Who does love me right, and how can I love them back?" It was a Thursday evening in late August, the kind of dusky twilight that made everything look a little softer, even the broken things. I'd just finished cleaning up after dinner with Rosa and her family. They had left earlier, the kids waving wildly from the back seat, a few leftover tamales packed up in foil on my counter. My house was quiet now, peaceful. Then came the knock. Not a timid knock, not aggressive either, just uncertain. I opened the door, and there she was, Isabella, standing on my porch like a ghost, who wasn't sure if she'd been invited to haunt me or not. Her hair was tied back, her makeup minimal, her clothes nothing like the polished posts she used to share online. For once, she looked less like a magazine spread and more like a real person. "Hi, Dad," she said, voice quiet. I didn't answer. I stepped aside, and she walked in. We sat at the kitchen table. No coffee, no small talk. Just silence stretching out between us like a tightrope neither of us wanted to be the first to fall from. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said finally. I almost turned around 4 times on the way over. "Why didn't you?" I asked. "Because I owed you something I couldn't fit into an apology letter." I waited. If you're still watching, comment 1, so I know you're still with me. She took a breath like she was about to dive underwater. Then she spoke. "I was wrong. About everything. About you, about family, about what it means to be successful. I spent years trying to look like the kind of woman Spokane would admire. I never stopped to think what it cost us. What it cost you." Her eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them back. "When we lost the house, I thought the worst part would be downsizing. Losing the kitchen, the space. But that wasn't it. The worst part was looking at Michael and realizing I didn't know who I was without the image we'd built and ruined." "And who are you now?" I asked. She laughed softly. "Still figuring that out. But I'm trying to be honest. That's why I came." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small photo album. one of those cheap ones you could buy at a drugstore. She slid it across the table to me. I opened it. The first photo was of Michael holding a mop, grinning sheepishly. "Cleaning job," she said. "He's working nights now." Swallowed more pride than I thought possible. The next picture was of a 2-bedroom apartment. Modest, clean. The kitchen had laminate countertops and a hand-painted sign on the fridge that read, "Home is not a house." Then came a photo of Mateo with a crayon drawing of what looked like me. I told him you used to help build houses. He thinks you're a superhero. I stared at the picture. Something warm and painful swirled in my chest. Why now, I asked. Why this visit? Because we finally started living without your money. And I realized how much harder it is to live without your presence. I didn't respond right away. There was a time I would have jumped at this moment. Opened the floodgates, hugged her, said everything was forgiven, pretended none of it had happened. But I wasn't that man anymore. I didn't live on scraps of affection or crumbs of attention. "You came for closure?" I asked. "No," she said. "I came because I wanted you to know. I see it now. All of it. And I understand if you never want to see me again. But I didn't want to keep living like you were dead. Because you're not." I looked at her for a long time, and I saw the cracks, the vulnerability, the absence of arrogance. It wasn't redemption, but it was a beginning. I walked her to the door. The porch light flickered softly as the sky darkened. "Is Mateo still drawing superheroes?" I asked. She smiled. "He drew one last week with a tool belt and gray hair. I think it was you." "Well, I said he's got good taste." She hesitated, then reached out, not to hug, but to gently squeeze my hand. "Good night, Dad," she whispered. "Good night, Isabella." After she left, I didn't cry. I didn't pour whiskey. I didn't sit on the couch and rehash the past. I just stood in my quiet kitchen, stared at the photo of Mateo's drawing, and smiled. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a moment. It was a direction. You didn't give it all at once. You walked toward it step by step. Sometimes slowly, sometimes with tears, sometimes with the sound of quiet footsteps walking away from your door, and the memory of a voice calling you Dad, not because they needed something, but because they meant it. It was a sunny Sunday in late October, the kind of afternoon Spokane rarely gifted before winter. Golden leaves danced across my driveway. The air smelled like wood smoke and endings, but also beginnings. Rose's family had invited me to their harvest dinner. Nothing fancy, just pot roast and pumpkin pie, folding chairs in the backyard, and the sound of kids arguing over who got the biggest slice. I was bringing sweet rolls and a story. But before I left the house, I took one last look at the box sitting by the front door. It was taped neatly labeled with a black marker for Mateo. Open when ready. Inside were things that had no place in my life anymore. Copies of old checks, photos of the house I'd paid for, but never really lived in, a Spokane Review clipping with red ink still scrawled in the margins. A briefcase full of history, not secrets, just truth. But it also held something else, a letter handwritten. I'd written it the night after Isabella came to visit. It said, "Dear Mateo, one day you'll be old enough to ask questions. About your parents, about me, about what it means to be a good man. I want you to have facts, but also I want you to know this. Being a good man isn't about how much money you give. It's about how much dignity you keep. And sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is say no, with kindness, but with firmness. This box is not for bitterness. It's just the truth. Keep it or toss it. But promise me this, never let anyone make you feel small for having a good heart. Grandpa Dennis." I sealed the box and placed it in the hall closet. Mateo wasn't ready. but one day he would be. That afternoon, Rosa's